In this video, let us talk about our week 3 assignment, right? So, create and manage storage services, upload, download and delete the objects, right? So, in AWS, we have S3 storage, and in Azure, we talk about blob. Okay, so these two are very important. Without database you cannot do anything, without storage you cannot do anything, and cloud is known for storage. The first purpose of creating cloud was storage, and the second one is computation anyhow, but the main important purpose was storage. So in AWS we have S3 as a storage service, whereas in Azure we have blob storage as a service, right? So in this lab you have to create, these two services, S3 or blob, you can store image, you can store CSV files, you can store data as images, right? You can store videos, any kind of format, whatever is the data, structured, unstructured, in raw format, it can store anything, right? For example, in SQL, when you study, create tables in SQL, you are storing structured data there. You are creating a table. With rows and with columns, right? Then if it is roll number, you are giving only roll number data, numerical data. If it is let's say string, you are giving any string or numbers in that. So we have some strict rules, right? But this is S3 or blob is not like your SQL tables. They are like your space in your laptop, right? In your drive, F drive or E drive, you can create folders. You can either save text file, PDF file, or images or videos. In our laptop storage, whatever we can store, same way we can store everything in these services, right? Either in S3 and blob, you can store any kind of data like we store in our local space. In our laptops or systems, we have hard drive space, right, on TB or 500 GB SSD. Whatever we can store, same thing can be stored in S3 and blob, right? So this week's assignment is to understand these two services well, because when you are going to play with machine learning project, you have, in ML we say we need data, right? So that data you will be storing in these services. Or when you talk about SQL, you want to run some queries, you want to store some data into tables, into database, and then you want to run some queries. For that also you have to store everything in this storage services, S3 or blob. Very powerful. Without these two services or without this storage service, you cannot do any task in these cloud platforms. Okay, so S3, I'll talk about Azure, AWS here. S3, we have to create buckets, right? So you, in Amazon S3, you can store as much as data you want, any amount of data from any kind of source. It could be analytical data, it could be log file, application data, pictures, videos, backup, archival, your HTML, CSS, your web technologies code, your machine learning data, anything can be stored. Okay, how to do that? You can create bucket, specify the region, access controls and management options, upload any amount of data. You can do it in S3. Once you store, you can do lot of things. You can either run queries, you can run your AML models, you can train, anything you can do in S3. Okay, so S3 is like a storage bucket, storage space. In S3, you have to create buckets. Okay, in each bucket you have to give unique name. Let's say I will put my bucket as Vinay underscore ML underscore iris data set. I will create a bucket like this. Okay, in this bucket I will store my iris data set CSV file, and later using other services I will play with this file. So my storage will be in S3. You have to create buckets. In each bucket you can store data. Bucket is just for classification. Bucket is like database. You can create multiple database, right? Same way you can create multiple buckets. One bucket for log files, one bucket for code backup, one bucket for actual data. Like that you can create a number of buckets in S3. Okay, so when you store data in S3 bucket, right, you can run SQL queries using Amazon Redshift, or you can write SQL like queries using Amazon Athena. Okay, and EMR is for Elastic MapReduce. This is for big data, Hadoop related tasks. right, EMR. Okay, once you bring the data into, once you write queries using Redshift, you can even use QuickSight. Okay, so these are all linked services with Amazon S3, right? So what you have to do in this lab, you have to store data in S3. Then you can the another service is Amazon Athena. This is another linked service. So you can keep your data in S3, run SQL like queries directly on that data. So data is there in S3 bucket. There you can run SQL like queries, deleting some records, inserting new records. No, you know all the operations of SQL, creating, deleting, updating something, right? Everything you can do using Amazon Athena. So put your data in S3 bucket, go to Amazon Athena. So these are three services which you have to explore along with the S3. So Amazon Athena is one where you can directly write SQL queries. So data, how to upload data? You create data in some CSV file, some Excel sheet, you create data, some dummy rows and columns you put, you insert data, and then go to Athena. Right, in Athena you write SQL queries on that particular data. Then the next one is AWS Glue. Right, what does this AWS Glue does? Glue can help you. Let's say in S3 there is one CSV file. It has lot of rows and columns. Now I want to create a SQL table. How do you create a SQL table given a data? That can be done using AWS Glue. So you load your file into S3 bucket, go to AWS Glue, open that, load that CSV file. It will automatically create a table for you with whatever name you say. Then using Glue, after creating the table, you know what to do with the table. Insert record, delete, update, all that you can do. Right. So tables are automatically created based on the structure of the content in the CSV file. And then the third one is Amazon S3 Select. You can run SQL like queries in S3 itself. So S3 Select is one new service. In this you can go wherever in S3 itself you can write queries. Right. So people who are doing exercise on AWS have to store data in S3 and then use these three services and run SQL queries, deleting record, inserting new record, updating some column value, all that stuff what we do in SQL DBMS lab, same thing you have to do it here in AWS. Then coming to Azure, right? In Azure we have to create a new account. Storage is a separate account in Azure. In AWS it is not like that, but in Azure we have to create a storage account. So log in into Azure, click for storage. You can search for Azure Blob Storage, or you can search for a storage account. You can create a new storage account. After you create a storage account, only you can see this, explore this Azure Blob Storage. Right. So again, what can we do here in Azure? Okay, so there are three more services here. There are multiple services, but very importantly used I have listed down for both the cloud platforms. So store your data in Azure Blob Storage, load whatever CSV file, whatever you want to. Generally, see, we can play with SQL like queries only if the data is in numerical form, or sorry, it's in table form, right? So if it is like CSV file, only then we can convert into a SQL table and write queries. Okay. So that way you can store your data in Azure Blob Storage. Then first one is Azure SQL database. Direct service is there, Azure SQL database. What can you do? You have to load your data from the blob storage into this SQL database, and then you can run queries. Okay. So create one SQL CSV file, throw it into Azure Blob Storage, then go to this SQL database service, load the data and run the queries. Right. The second one is Azure Synapse Analytics. In this also you can write SQL like queries on the data. You can load your data from the blob and run the queries. Then the third one is Azure Databricks. Here it is you can write queries using Spark SQL. This is again little typical one. Spark SQL, things related to the big data, right? For big data querying or big data processing, we use Spark SQL. So if the data size is very high, go to Azure Databricks, load, bring your data into that platform and run the queries, right? So all three do similar task, but the environment is different, the purpose is different. Okay, so please study this. Very important week, very important lab is about storage services. Okay, because storage, without storage you cannot do anything, right? So please explore these platforms, load some dummy data, download it from somewhere or upload from you yourself, create some CSV file, load it there, fill some data and then run the queries. Okay, I think you can find some dummy CSV files in the internet, and then you can load them and play with them, right? Take down the notes, important points you note down about the storage services, what all new services you are exploring, like you are going to explore not only S3 but other services as well, right? Keep in mind about the region zones. Data services or storage services are not available in all the regions or all the zones, right? So you should remember this. This is very important point when you are following these two cloud platforms. Okay, thank you.